So with a new place and a new, larger space, you might be wondering, what exactly is the plan here? Well, if you're any sort of experienced gardener who's like somewhat addicted to plants, I think you know what the obvious answer is. Fill it up. So as exciting as it is to have this entire space to work with, I've got to be honest, it's also a little scary. It's not particularly pretty here in the beginning of April in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. So let's go inside and I'll show you what the plan is. So last year felt like such an expansion year for me just because I wanted to have a few flowers in 3 different gardens just in case my main one failed. And I feel like this year, even though that was so big, I'm probably going to be planting like 4 times as much stuff as I planted last year. Does it feel like a lot? Yes. Do I get nervous sometimes? Also yes. Whew. But I think it's gonna be great. And once I get past this initial year of just like wrapping my head around being on an acreage instead of a backyard, I think it's gonna be totally fine. So we've decided to divide up our garden into 3 blocks. 1, 2, 3. These are not perfect to scale, but just bear with me, we're gonna make it work. So this first block here is what we planted last year, and we got rows of like about 4 of flowers, and then we filled it out with a few vegetables, and there was some blank space over here that we didn't really get to. And then over here and over here was where we had the tarp to try to reduce the weeds. Now, in the fall, I planted some perennials along here, some perennials along here, and actually some perennials along here. So I should probably mark that in. So this year, the idea is that we're gonna build another high tunnel. Now I can see I probably made this high tunnel way too big for scale, but whatever. So the idea is that this section would now get its own high tunnel. And then the year after, we're hoping that this section will have its own high tunnel. But for this year, this bed is going to be all flower farm. And this is basically where everything is going that I'm planting for shifting blooms. Then over here is going to be our vegetables. There'll be some flowers thrown in here, but these will be more like for companion flowers, or just things I would regularly have in a vegetable garden. And then over here will be larger things. So like our pumpkins will go here, corn, and any sort of large crops. And so that's the basic plan. Then the idea is next year we would shift this one over here, and then the year after that the flowers would go there. So then the vegetables would go here next year, and then the vegetables would go here the year after that. Then as for the raised beds, we're gonna add 1 more archway to here, and then we have a little greenhouse that'll be perfect for seed starting, and that's gonna go right in this space. It doesn't look like much, but imagine with me, if you will, another little greenhouse for seed starting right about there. Unfortunately, we just have to wait for the snow to melt before we can set it up. So now let's pretend that this section over here is now actually this section. And I'm just not one of those people who will like plot out every single little flower. So here's the general gist of things. In the high tunnel, we have some hardy annuals planted right now. This row here, these 2 rows will also be full of flowers. So what last year was the tomato greenhouse, this year is going to be a flower greenhouse. And then ranunculus will follow in hopefully about 2 weeks or so. And then dahlias and eucalyptus will be last. There will be a whole bunch of dahlias here and here. I planted amaranth here last year, and everybody tells me that amaranth is a rampant self-seeder. So we'll just keep the amaranth in the same spot. Then snapdragons will be all over here because I do plan on having a lot of snaps. Then any of my supporting flowers will all be here, fillers, greens and grasses. a whole row for dried flowers, and then any experiments and my special West Coast Seeds garden. And then I will probably have a lot of zinnias and cosmos, so they can go there along with sunflowers can get their own row. And I mean, this could all change a little bit, but basically my idea is when I'm making a bouquet, I want to be able to grab whatever my main one is, my hero flower, and then I want to be able to just go through the rows and easily find the things that I need. So here's the basic vegetable plan, and now that I made it, I have a feeling that some of this stuff will not be in the exact row, but this is just sort of the flow that I think is going to happen. So in that new high tunnel, that's where our peppers, cukes, and hopefully my loofah plants will go, as well as 2 rows of tomatoes. So basically the same setup as last year. Then I thought it would be best to keep all the cruciferous vegetables together because these ones will need some row covers. And I think it's easier to just keep the high maintenance ones in the same spot closer to the house. Then next is lettuce, spinach, and Swiss chard, the kind of leafy greens. Again, nicer to have those closer to the house because you do tend to like run out and grab a few throughout the year. Next will be beets and carrots, our onions, garlic, which we already planted in the fall. Actually, depending on where exactly this is, this one will have to be wherever I planted it, and onions will just go with. Then a row for zucchini and squash, then herbs, radish, other root vegetables, sort of the stuff that I don't plant as much of. This is just like an extra row. Then if there's any extra cukes or tomatoes, this could also be another row for peas or beans, and peas and beans right here. If you're curious about how my seed starting efforts are going, make sure you watch this video where I give you a tour of all of my seedlings so far. As for events and things that I'm selling with Shifting Blooms, I have 8 weddings booked so far this year. Now, of course, one has happened already. We're going to be doing a couple of those bouquet building nights again. So probably have groups of people out on the acreage, maybe 3 or 4 of those. Tossing around the idea of doing like an in-person backyard business course. So maybe people who are interested in cut flower farming, it would actually come to the acreage for like 4 hours live, and I would tour around the garden, like talk about business basics and answer any of their questions they had, that kind of thing. For the first time this year, I'm also offering a CSA. I'm a little nervous to do weekly flowers, especially since, you know, I always have certain flowers sort of set aside for my bride. So I thought I would just do a monthly CSA. So there would be bouquets in June, July, August, and September. And if for some reason my tulip crops or my daffodil crops fail, there's nothing for June, they'll just move that bouquet over onto August when there's always an abundance of flowers. Other than that, it's going to be a really exciting year. I've also got the West Coast Seeds project. So that garden is starting to grow. My little seedlings are doing really well. And as you saw in there, I have that whole row just for the West Coast Seeds garden. So you can watch this video here. It kind of goes through it, but the premise is if you had to like buy only $100 worth of seeds, what could you get and could you like make decent bouquets with that? So that's a really fun project that I'm very excited about. So that's what I have planned this year for both Shifting Roots and Shifting Blooms. If you really like cold climate gardening, especially if you're in zone 3 and on the prairies like I am, you'll definitely want to hit that subscribe button. I'm also on Instagram almost every single day. All right, friends, we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. I was hoping there would just be like even one measly, tiny bit of green to show you, like maybe a daffodil or a tulip could have considered popping up, but no, there is nothing, of course.